now that I have your attention, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Sunday service at First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. My name is Adam Lunter. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Hi. And suddenly it's turned into an AA meeting. I don't know why that happened. But anyway, pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm a member of your worship committee. We're very glad you could join us this Sunday, either in person or online. If you are a visitor or a newcomer, we'd like to extend a special welcome to you. And if you're new to the congregation, we'd like to invite you to fill out a newcomer form found in the live stream description or in the lobby of the church. We also would like to invite you to stay after our service for conversation and refreshments in Fellowship Hall directly beneath our sanctuary. I think we're having a bake sale today too, so yes, exactly. If you are attending online, we encourage you to connect with each other in the chat. Don't forget that the link for virtual coffee hour can also be found in your weekly e-news. And all of our families with children are invited to connect with our Director of Religious Education, Danielle Kozemchek, over here. That's her. We also would like to take a moment now to encourage you all to send your joys and concerns so that they are received in time for the pastoral prayer. You can access the online joys and concerns via the link available in your order of service, in the live stream description, with the QR codes in your pew, or you can aim your smartphone at that one right there. We have several announcements this morning and a very jam-packed service this morning, so we're going to just jump right into it. It's a busy day at First Unitarian. So during our coffee hour downstairs, as I said, our coming of age and youth group participants are holding a bake sale. We're selling fair trade coffee, chocolate, tea, and hot cocoa, and the fundraiser benefits their Boston field trip. Second, our annual First Church Community Funds Grant. Can anybody say that fast 5 times? Our first annual First Church Community Funds Grant distribution announcement is this morning, and after the service, several organizations are tabling in Fellowship Hall. We'd like to encourage you to visit them and learn more about the work they do in the St. Louis area. Visitors and guests are invited to join Reverend Kim in the Dodson room behind us for an informal meet and greet with any newcomers at 11:30 a.m. Next, we need ushers. It's a simple way to help out with the service. Basically, you hand out programs on the way in, you collect the offertory, and you ush. I just made up that verb, actually. I don't know if it is a real one. But if you are interested in ushing, you can help by emailing our church administrator, Lynn Hunt. Finally, we'd like to encourage you all to save the date for next Saturday, October 21st. All area UU congregations are participating in a trunk or treat event in our parking lot from 4:30 to 6 p.m. So costume up, decorate your vehicle, fill the trunk with goodies, and come on over. We would like for cars to arrive about 4 p.m. if they want to begin decorating here. And if you do plan on decorating your trunk or yourself, please sign up. And the link is available, again, in your e-news or on the website. Okay. Welcome to this religious community where we affirm the dignity and freedom of all who enter. Here, we seek to live together in relationship and respect so that we may embrace and celebrate our differences. Our religious values invite us to a shared journey of truth and meaning. Sincerity and connection guide our religious community and call us into a deeper association with ourselves and our world. Welcome. We're very glad you are a part of this community this morning. And now we invite you to enjoy our prelude, Prelude on St. Columba by Healy William, performed by our music director, Earl Naylor.
It's been so long since I wore one of these, I forgot the order. Take it off, then turn the mic on. Good morning. I am the Reverend Kim Mason, she, her, hers, and I serve this congregation as your minister. Our theme for the month of October is heritage. Today, we explore our Transcendentalist heritage and how it is alive in us today. Unitarian minister and Transcendentalist forefather Ralph Waldo Emerson asked, "Is not prayer a study of truth? A venture of the soul into the unfound infinite? No one ever prayed heartily without learning something." Here, we gather to study the truth as we understand it. Here, we venture into the unfound infinite and interconnected. Bound by love, together, may we learn something. Come, let us worship. I invite you to rise as you are willing and able and join in our hymn of the month, number 44. We sing of Golden Mornings, which happens to have lyrics by Emerson. Please rise as you are willing and able.
Our chalice lighting this morning is actually an original poem that I wrote, so I can tell you all that I've known the poet my whole life, personally. It's been a love-hate relationship. Anyway, no more jokes, I promise. Okay, this is called Caesura. Consider the transition from inhale to exhale, the milliseconds between heartbeats, and the almost imperceptible moment of darkness during a blink, and be there. Know that in silence so profound you can almost feel its weight pressing against your eardrums, that this is when the universe will disclose all that it contains, and be there. And in the sharp, ephemeral whiff of ozone after the strike of a match, recall the fire burning within you and rejoice in having been kept warm and alive for this long, and be there.
morning, everyone. My name is Danielle Kazemchuk. I am the Director of Religious Education as well as Church Communications, and I am going to tell the story for all ages today. I've already got 2 audience members up here. Oh, there's 3 of them, I'm sorry. Does anybody else want to come up to the front for the story? Okay, well, you're lost. All right, we're going to start this story. But first, I want to ask you guys, do you know who Henry, you right there, and you, do you know who Henry David Thoreau is?
No.
That's not a person, but that is his name. Yeah. Well, he was a writer, and we actually read a book about him last year where he took a hike. You remember that? No. Okay. Well, I'll just tell you, he was a writer, and he really loved nature, okay? And we're going to read a story about him, and the setting for this story is outside in nature, and everything is very still. So before we start listening to the story, I want you to take a deep breath in, and then even longer deep breath out. Sorry. And then we're going to go ahead and close our eyes. Okay, so we can because we don't have a slideshow today, so we just have to imagine what this is like. And if you've ever been outside in nature, you got some imagination for that. Okay. All right. So, Henry, he's known for building a little cabin in the woods. He's sitting in front of his little cabin on one of his 3 chairs. He only had 3 chairs, by the way, in his whole house. There was nothing to listen to. Come here. You want to come up and sit with me? No? Okay. There's there's nothing to listen to because this is way back in the day. Born over 100 years ago, right? So there's no television. There's no iPod. There's not even iPods now. It's kind of an older story. There's no smartphone. There's no tablet. So those kind of things would not be around for over 100 years. There's no one to talk to. He's all by himself. Okay? There's no airplanes overhead. There's no radio coming from next door. Mr. Emerson's house, the closest thing to a next-door neighbor, was over a mile away. Not that he had a radio to play in any case. Even the natural world was still. No wind rippled the pond, and the birds had stopped singing as night approached. Okay, really have to close your eyes and imagine, okay? Henry listened for the stillest, tiniest sounds. A small fish breaking the water and splashing down again. The crackle of leaves as a mouse passed by. The sound of wings as a crow passed overhead. To him, these miniature sounds were music. Of course, most of the townspeople thought Henry David Thoreau was crazy when he decided to build a tiny cabin made from used materials out in his friend's wood lot by Waldo Emerson. Why would a writer, a promising writer, want to move away from society to sit with birds and bugs for company? In fact, Henry enjoyed the company of other thinkers who shared his Transcendentalist philosophy. However, to him, the quiet of the pond and the animals and the plants that lived in and around it provided excellent company. Sometimes, Henry thought, the conversation you learn the most from is the one in which the least is said. I gotta stop turning that way. As he watched the last rays of light glisten on the pond, Henry thought about the biblical story of the prophet Elijah, who crawled off to a mountain cave to listen for what God wanted him to do. While Elijah stood outside of his cave, a great wind whipped around the mountains. Boulders crashed to the ground in the fury of its passing. But God wasn't in the wind or the boulders. Then there's an earthquake that rattled the mountain with a terrific rumbling. But God wasn't in the earthquake. Then came a fire sweeping across the rocks and brush outside the cave, red and roaring and grand. But God wasn't in the fire either. Finally, after all the roaring and the crashing, everything became really, really quiet. And Elijah stood there shaking, wrapped in his cloak, just waiting. And out of the silence came the still, small voice of his God. I'm not at all sure, thought Henry, that I believe in the God of the Bible, the one who chatted with Elijah. But whatever God there is, I'm pretty sure I know it better out here in the quiet than I would through any ranting sermon. Maybe God is speaking to me in the small voice of the jumping fish and the rustling leaves, the still pond, and the stars beginning to peek through the trees. Maybe I hear God when my heart is still, and I can listen with my very smallest inner ear. Tiny little ear. Maybe. And his thoughts drifted off with a small breeze that came and ruffled his hair and rippled across the quiet lake. And that's the end of that story. And we're going to sing you guys out, and we're going to go outside and plant bulbs. Yeah.
Each week, we bring our joys, celebrations, sorrows, and concerns with us to this community. We know that both the gifts of life and the losses of life can be burdens. Our interconnectedness invites solidarity and offers solace. Now is the time in our service when we connect with one another by sharing our sorrows and concerns. This week, we send healing and well wishes to several folks in the congregation who are recovering from COVID. We offer hope and care to those in our community whose loved ones have been hospitalized in the past weeks or are waiting for a new health diagnosis. In our community, we mourn the lives lost with the war between Israel and Hamas. We carry deep concern for the cruelty of war and the disregard for the lives it impacts. And we wait with bated breath for a friend's birthday party that isn't until 3 o'clock. We hold these concerns with tenderness and compassion. May they be lighter because they are shared. As a community, we also share our joys and celebrations with one another. We celebrate with Jean Rubin and Dottie Kinshirp on the birth of their most recent grandchild. I don't have a date, but we celebrate all grandbabies. And in our community, we celebrate a spouse's homemade chicken soup on a chilly fall day. We are grateful that a daughter has been released from the hospital with an assessment and is responding quickly to treatment. And we celebrate a friend's birthday today. May these joys be magnified because they are shared. With many joys and concerns remaining unspoken, I invite us into contemplation and reflection. This week, we witnessed the horror of renewed violence in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine. In seeking my own comfort around this new war, I found solace in words of both Muslim and Jewish leaders. Ori Hannon-Weisberg, Grants and International Communications Coordinator at Israel Religious Action Center, wrote, "I'm angry at those on the right who are already waving this as a vindication of their cruelty and hate-mongering. And I'm angry at those on the left who are celebrating this as a valid resistance and a step in the direction of justice. I'm angry at their glib equivocations that show zero compassion for individual lives. One cannot seek justice for peoples if one isn't seeking justice for people. Justice only comes when we provide safety and dignity for all." Valerie Kaur, founder of the Revolutionary Love Project, said, quote, "I believe our most powerful response to the horror in Israel and Palestine is to refuse to surrender our humanity." Right now, we are in extremis. Our hearts and minds are overwhelmed with information and images, and our lizard brain, that amygdala that takes over when we're under stress, is kicking in with rage and fear. After watching a year and a half of war between Ukraine and Russia, we are devastated by a new war breaking out. We are worried for the children and the civilians who bear the immense toll of this conflict on both sides. We exist in a diverse nation, worship in a pluralistic faith community, and carry a multiplicity of experiences and identities that mean we are worried for our Jewish and Muslim family and friends. This is no both sides platitude, but recognition of the complexity of historic trauma and displacement that is playing out while we watch from afar. When we are tempted to find quick solutions or easy answers, when we are tempted to blame and dehumanize, I invite us to stay with the complicated, with the messy, with the heart work that keeps us rooted in the humanity of all. So I invite you into prayer and mindful attention with the words of our UUA president, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. I pray for the people of Israel and Palestine. I pray for leaders around the globe who must respond to this latest flare of violence and the untenable ethical considerations that abound. I pray for Muslim and Jewish UUs who experience the impact of this long strife acutely. I pray that those of us less likely to know the trauma of unending brutality and harm will not turn away from generational loss, from the devastating realities and their root causes, or from the relentless tragedy of war and occupation. Be gentle with yourselves when you need to be, but do not turn away unless you must. We are one global family, living tenuously on the same human-impacted earth. Let us center ourselves in justice as we call for peace. Amen, and blessed be.
Our reading today is from Transcendentalist philosopher and theologian Margaret Fuller. Sunday, May 12th, 1833, Meditations. The clouds are marshaling across the sky, leaving their deepest tints upon yon range of soul-alluring hills. The breeze comes softly, laden with tribute that 100 orchids, now in their fullest bloom, send in thanks for this refreshing shower. The birds pour forth in heightened melody the notes of praise they had suspended while God's voice was speaking and his eye flashing upon this world. I sigh, half charmed, half pained. My sense is living and taking in this freshened beauty tells its pleasure to the mind. The mind replies and strives to wake the heart in turn, repeating poetic sentiments from many a record which other souls have left when stirred and satisfied by scenes as fair and as fragrant. But then the heart sends back a hollow echo to the call of outward things, and its once bright companion, who erst would have been answered by a stream of life-fraught treasures, thankful to be summoned, can now rouse nothing better than this echo, unmeaning voice, which mocks the softened accents. Content thee, beautiful world, and hush, still busy mind. My heart hath sealed its fountains. To the things of time they shall be opened no more. Too long, too often they poured forth. Part have sunk into the desert, part profaned and swollen by bitter waters. Mixed by those who feigned, they asked them for refreshment, which turned back, have broken and o'erflowed their former urns. So when ye talk of pleasure, lonely world, and busy mind, ye ne'er again shall move me to answer, ye, though still your calls have power to jar me through, cause a dull aching here. No, so the voice which hailed me from the depths of yon dark blossom cloud, now vanishing, before the sun ye greet, it touched my center, the voice of the eternal calling me to feel his other worlds, to feel that if I could deserve a home, I still might find it in other spheres, and bade me not despair, though want of harmony and aching void are terms invented by the men of this world, which I may not forget. In former times, I loved to see the lightnings flash athwart the stooping heavens. I loved to hear the thunder call to the seas and mountains. For I thought 'tis thus man's flashing fancy doth he kindle the firmament of the mind. 'Tis thus his eloquence calls unto the soul's depth and heights, and still I defied the creature, nor remembered the Creator in these works. Ah, now how different. The proud delight of that keen sympathy is gone, no longer riding on the wave, but whelmed beneath it. My own plans and works, or as the scriptures phrase it, my inventions, no longer interpose, twist me in heaven. Today, for the first time, I felt the deity and uttered prayer on hearing thunder. This must be thy will, for finer, higher spirits have gone through this same process. Yet, I think there was religion in that strong delight. There are sounds, those sounds of power imparted. True, I did not say, he is the Lord thy God, but I had feeling of his essence. But 'twas pride by which the angels fell, so be it. But oh, might I but see a little onward. Father, I cannot be a spirit of power. May I be active as a spirit of love, since thou hast taken me from that path which is nature, seem to a point, oh, deign to open another, where I may walk with thought and hope assured. Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. Had I but faith like that which fired Novalis, I too could bear the heart fallen in ashes, while freed the spirit rises from beneath them with heavenward look and phoenix plumes upsoaring.
It is the mission of the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis to be a welcoming congregation, inspiring lives of loving kindness and integrity by, will you say it with me, nurturing spirituality. You can say it along with me. Nurturing spirituality, building community, and advancing justice. By the end of the year, we're all going to know that by heart. One of the ways we do that is by sharing our time and financial resources with institutions and organizations working for the mutual flourishing of all in the St. Louis region. This morning is our annual presentation of the First Church Community Fund grants. I invite forward Rosemary Lawton.
Good morning. As chair of the committee, each year I'm here to deliver an annual report on grants funded from an endowment created almost 40 years ago today to encourage our church's involvement in the community and its role in addressing community issues. Our committee manages the grant process, which begins in a cycle each July when we issue an RFP to a fairly large database this time of smaller nonprofits focused on serving the poor, the unhoused, and marginalized individuals in our community. And that process concludes with our selection process in September. In just a moment, I'm going to tell you about our 2023 grants. But before I do that, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the members of our committee, some of whom are in the sanctuary today. And if they are, I'd ask them to just raise their hand or stand if they prefer. Lori Calcaterra, Kay Dusenberry, I see Kay in the back, Julia Hart, Donald Jeffries, Stephanie Neep, Debbie Van Ryn, Lynn Shooter, Margaret Weck, and Laura Zacher. As background, our grants are funded from endowment income. The endowment at this point is about $155,000. This year, there was $7,800 available in income for grants. Our RFP suggested a grant maximum of $750. We received 26 grant requests, more than a 30% increase from last year. And of those, 12 were selected for funding. Requests ranged from $300 to $1,000. The average of all grants that we funded was $650. In all but 2 instances, the grants matched the requests. And I would mention that our grants are made to smaller organizations where the grants that we are awarding can have a significant impact. They can make a project happen that otherwise wouldn't be possible. They can fill an emergency need, and they also can be leveraged with other donations for the organization. When we are selecting, we're looking at the strength of the request. We look at its impact for the organization. What difference will it make? We look at the fit in terms of our mission and values as a community, a church community. And we also look at its focus. We're really looking for some diversity in terms of the grants that we award. And they are fairly diverse organizations this year. So our grants funded All Nana's Kids Closet, which has as its mission ensuring that all children are warm during the winter. AmeriCorps St. Louis, which works with winter outreach to have a shelter in Soulard, and our grant will be used for facility improvements. Caring for Kids, for twin beds and bedding for children who are moving out of foster care into a family situation. City Garden Montessori asked for some funding for their families who may sometimes need help with rent, utilities, food, hygiene, or transportation. The Crime Victims Center, our money will be used to help domestic victims of abuse in terms of transportation and also in terms of securing orders of protection. Grace and Peace Fellowship, funds will be used to help women who are moving out of the shelter into permanent housing in terms of the first month's rent and security deposits. The Mental Health Collaborative, which is part of Casa de Salud, and our money will help outfit a nonverbal therapy space, which will be used for victims of trauma, non-English speaking individuals, and children. Metro Trans Umbrella Group, we will help them get food for their food pantry and help with name, gender marking change fees. The Just Food Truck, which is a new project just starting up, and a food truck will visit 3 impoverished areas weekly to ensure that the individuals have access to a warm meal. Sometimes that might be the only really good meal they have that week. Unleashing Potential, we are giving them money for infant formula for families in their Building Resistant Families program. Welcome Neighbor, our grants will go towards grocery gift cards for newly arriving immigrants. And then finally, the Wellston Loop Community Development Corporation, which asked for funds to help support a part-time worker who will conduct research on the referrals they make to chemical dependency treatment centers to gauge the effectiveness of that approach. So I'm excited again to be able to tell you that 8 of these organizations have come here this morning to tell you about the wonderful work that they're doing. I would like to encourage everyone to go up and talk with them about their work and introduce yourselves and welcome them to our congregation. And then finally, today and throughout the year, we gratefully accept all donations to our endowment fund. It is through donations that our grants continue into the future, and each year we're able to see some growth in terms of the amount of money available for grants. So on behalf of the committee, thank you.
All non-pledged donations received in this morning's offering will go towards the First Church Community Fund endowment. This morning's offering will now be received.
There find the King.
I know that grant making seems like it would be an easy committee job. And granted, it's way easier than grant writing. But I want to say an extra thank you to the First Church Community Fund, to the committee members who are tasked with making the difficult decisions and with the fundraising to make it possible. So for your efforts on the committee and for your gifts today and every day, thank you. First Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, giving thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of love for you. It is not only when we audibly and in form address our petitions to the deity that we pray. We pray without ceasing. Every secret wish is a prayer. Every house is a church. The corner of every street is a closet of devotion. Ralph Waldo Emerson. When I was a director of religious education, I led monthly chapel services with the children and youth. One year, I decided, let's talk about prayer. It's one of those topics that we as Unitarian Universalists don't quite know where we land. So I thought, let's talk about it with the kids. I began with a slideshow. I asked the kids, is this prayer? They answered yes. Then I showed them more pictures. And another picture. And another. I said, is this prayer? Yes, the children answered. And I began passing around the room a rosary and a string of Tibetan prayer beads and a Native American prayer rattle. I showed them more pictures. The children knew the answer was supposed to be yes. But with each new image came questions. And we were able to expand the idea of what it means to pray. Maybe you have some questions about a few of these images yourself. On October 15th, 1826, 197 years ago today, Ralph Waldo Emerson preached his very first sermon. He didn't have the World Wide Web to help him gather a multitude of images representing the theological diversity of prayer practices. And while Emerson did later cultivate an avid study of Hinduism, in those early years, Emerson was still in formation, still very much a Christian, and in 1826, still a student at Harvard Divinity School. So you could consider that early sermon an intern sermon. Pray without ceasing was based on the text that I read earlier from 1 Thessalonians. In it, an Emerson we don't quite recognize makes three assertions. First, he says, every desire of the human mind is a prayer uttered to God. Second, he says, our prayers are granted. third, he says, "Our prayers are written in heaven." When I read it the first time, I thought, I'm not sure how to connect this Emerson with the Emerson of self-reliance. But upon closer examination, we can find kernels of this early Emerson. You see, this early Emerson says, the reason that we are always praying, that our every prayer is known by the holy, is that our connection to the divine is innate and ongoing. That we are at one with the holy in the world. There is no separation. You can see the beginnings of Emerson's idea of the oversoul here. And thus, because there is no separation, our every hope and wish is known. Now, when I read every hope and wish, I had a little pause. Everyone. Don't worry, he says. Those times when you pray that the earth will open up and swallow your nemesis, or when you covet someone else's fame or good looks, those aren't actually prayers. No, he says, those are a mockery of prayer. Real prayers are the heartfelt sentiments, the, quote, daily, hourly, momentary desires that come without impediment, without fear. And so it is in this way that we are always praying. And he goes on and says, because these are our deepest and most honest feelings, these are also the things that we work really hard to achieve. He says, it is not clear that what we strongly and earnestly desire we shall make every effort to obtain. And has not God so furnished us with powers of body and mind that we can acquire whatsoever we seriously and unceasingly strive for? He's saying, you pray and then you act. That you work for the things that you pray for. And in that way, your prayers are answered. You can certainly see self-reliance there. So how did Reverend Emerson, how many people actually knew he was a Unitarian? Or a minister? Yeah, just a few. How did Reverend Emerson become Ralph Waldo Emerson, Transcendentalist forefather? In 1829, Emerson was called to serve as associate minister at Second Church in Boston. And just 2 years later, his first wife, Ellen, died. And in his grief, he began to doubt his own beliefs. He wrote in his journal in 1832, I have sometimes thought that in order to be a good minister, it was necessary to leave the ministry. The profession is antiquated. In an altered age, we worship in the dead forms of our forefathers. No comment. Emerson took issue with the rituals of the church, particularly with communion and the practice of public prayer. And so, in the end, he resigned his position at Second Church, but he never resigned his ordination. Freed from the constraints of a parish job, Emerson gave free rein to his deepest questions. After a year of international travel, he returned to the United States in 1833 and began a career as a lecturer and essayist, publishing his first essay, Nature, in 1836. And it was also in 1836 that the Transcendentalist Club was founded, that central hub of the Transcendentalist movement in the United States. Emerson was not acting as a minister in a pulpit, but he was a philosopher and a theologian. And as such, in 1838, he was invited to give the graduation address at Harvard Divinity School, where he, quote, discounted biblical miracles and proclaimed that while Jesus was a great man, he was not God. This was classic Unitarianism. However, it was still a little radical for a div school address and for some of the other Protestants in attendance. And so he was banned from speaking at Harvard for another 30 years. But his thinking rang true for a lot of those Unitarians. And so many of the leading Transcendentalists were Unitarians, and not only Unitarians, but Unitarian ministers, such as James Freeman Clarke, Theodore Parker, and many, many names that you would not recognize, but a few of the other leaders whose names you might recognize include Bronson Alcott and his daughter Louisa May Alcott, Margaret Fuller, Elizabeth Palmer Peabody, and George Ripley, editor of the Transcendentalist paper, The Dial. And we can see some of the central tenets of Transcendentalism in Unitarian Universalism today. Transcendental knowledge of the direct connection between people, nature, and the holy. That oneness of everything that Caitlin sang of just a moment ago is one of the main tenets of Transcendentalism. A belief in the power of the individual and the importance of following one's own ideas and instincts. We see this in self-reliance, and it comes to us again and again in our Unitarian Universalist congregations where we are responsible for developing our own individual understanding of truth. The importance of nature as a conduit for both experiencing beauty and for getting back in touch with one's internal self, for prayer even. Margaret Fuller's poem that Adam read is an example of this, how we find ourselves again and again in nature, as was our story for all ages. And the value of social change as an expression of one's highest ideals. Anybody recognize modern Unitarian Universalism in any of that? This is our heritage, alive in our congregations today. Emerson's writing and the teachings of the Transcendentalists have become so interwoven in the fabric of Unitarian Universalism, for good or bad, that it would take a whole lecture series for me to draw them all out. But I want to return to this sermon on prayer, because Emerson also returned to this question of prayer in his later career. In the essay Self-Reliance, published in 1841, Emerson wrote, "Prayer is the contemplation of the facts from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of beholding a jubilant soul. It is the Spirit of God pronouncing his good works. But prayer as a means to effect a private end is meanness and theft. It supposes dualism and not unity in nature and consciousness. As soon as the man is at one with God, we'll excuse him for his sexist language, he will not beg. He will then see prayer in all action. The prayer of the farmer kneeling in the field to weed it. The prayer of the rower kneeling with the stroke of his oar are true prayers heard throughout nature. When we understand prayer this way, it opens up the possibility for prayer to move from our head to our heart to our hands. It allows prayer to be the thing that changes us and in turn changes the world. We pray to remind ourselves what is important to us, how we want to live and be, how we want to act. Emerson was still a theist, as were those early Unitarians. So one way their understanding of God can be expressed in our congregations today is as the spirit of love. Were I to make a slideshow on prayer for our children today, I might find a picture of the youth group cooking and serving lunch at the Trinity Hot Lunch Program. I might show Danielle tending the vegetables and herbs in the garden beds in the play space. I'd show the video of over 100 people lined up outside the church witnessing for Black lives in the summer of 2020. I would pass around the room one of the Afghans created by the Makers Ministry. Knowing Emerson's appreciation of nature, I might take the children to the memorial garden in the spring when the daffodils are blooming and the azaleas have popped out. And in the echo of that sacred space, I would see if they too find the still small voice inside and answer in the words of Margaret Fuller, "May I be active as a spirit of love." Our closing hymn this morning is number 187. It sounds along the ages. Please rise as you are willing and able and join us. Closing words come from Ralph Waldo Emerson and his poem, Give All to Love. Give all to love, obey thy heart, friends, kindred, days, good fame, plans, estate, credit, and the muse, nothing refuse. 'Tis a brave master, let it have a scope. Follow it utterly, hope beyond hope. High and more high, it dives into noon with wing unspent, untold intent. But it is a God, knows its own path and the outlets of the sky. Give all to love. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace. Please stay for the postlude, and as your final act of worship, when the music is done, please turn and greet your neighbor.